4, 3. Wait, let's see. Okay, we're live on YouTube now. Perfect. Let's record this. Perfect. Hey everyone, LANGERR at the mic. This is our first live episode, and as you can see, we're filming from our backyard today. And we also have a very special guest on the show today. We have my very good friend, a fellow Torontonian who is also a Montreal Canadiens fan at heart. We got Sheldon Weisberg joining the show today. How are you today, Sheldon?
I'm doing all right, Mike. How have you been?
I've been fantastic. I mean, as you could see, we're enjoying the weather here, right? I think the weather is also just as nice in Toronto, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, it is.
So, just enjoying the summer and gonna be starting school soon. So just, enjoying the summer while we can. And then when we get to work in September, then it'll be all systems go. So, yeah, I'm very, as we know, we're going to recap briefly the brief exhibition season of one game for each team that is eligible for the NHL qualifiers. We're going to obviously focus more on the Canadiens, and then we're going to preview the Montreal Canadiens versus Pittsburgh Penguins qualifier series. And then yeah, we're just going to make it an interest. Hopefully the discussions will be interesting. We're going to ask a lot of questions, and hopefully we'll provide some answers, and maybe even raise more questions.
That sounds about as real as we can get.
Perfect. Well, first and foremost, we're just gonna recap the games that went on. I have the scores right over here. So, as we know, the Canadiens lost to the Toronto Maple Leafs 4-2. Also, the Penguins lost to the Philadelphia Flyers 3-2. Edmonton Oilers beat the Flames 4-1. That was all on Tuesday. Then Wednesday, we have the Lightning beating the Panthers 5-0. Colorado Avalanche beating the Minnesota Wild 3-2. Capitals over the Hurricanes 3-2. Blackhawks over the Blues 4-0. Islanders over the Rangers 2-1. Jets over the Canucks 4-1. Now on to Thursday. Thursday we have the Predators beating the Stars 2-0. Blue Jackets beating the Bruins 4-1. And the Golden Knights beating the Coyotes 4-1. So I guess before we get into the Canadiens, let's just say, let me ask you, Sheldon, what do you think is your biggest surprise? I mean, first of all, we have to make it very clear that we cannot overreact or underreact to one exhibition game of all these teams that haven't played in 4 months. We can't over or underreact to anything, and at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything for the qualifier rounds. But with that being said, what is your biggest surprise of those results that I just mentioned so far?
Um, I haven't watched many of the exhibition games, but I am somewhat surprised that it was Chicago that beat St. Louis 4-0, you said. Considering how Chicago hasn't been such a strong team this season, they've run into injuries, they've had a couple new players coming up. But also, since I watched the Canadiens Maple Leafs game only, I am somewhat surprised how flat the Canadiens came out in that game. So that's a little concerning, and fortunately, from what I've been told, the coaching staff under Claude Julien is addressing it right now. So that's all you can do.
Absolutely. I mean, we'll get into that a little bit more in depth shortly, but the Canadiens, I believe they had the day off yesterday and they practiced today ahead of their game one matchup with the Pittsburgh Penguins tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, without overreacting to these games, I just think what's interesting to see is that Pittsburgh was also a little bit rusty against Philadelphia. I mean, I didn't watch the game, just watched highlights and followed the coverage of it. So that is intriguing. Also, I think we kind of know this going into the games, but I think the Islanders, just given their coaching staff and their structure, playing on, a Barry Trotz coach team is always a tough matchup, right? So even if the Islanders are going to lose, they're going to lose games 2-1, 3-1, 3-2. They're not going to get blown out, and they're not going to blow other teams out. They're going to play a tight structure, and they're going to be a tough out, whoever plays them. I also think Columbus is going to challenge the Leafs a lot. I think the Blue Jackets are going to be a tough out for the Leafs. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out. But we'll get into a little bit more details of that matchup a little bit later, because that has to do with one of the questions I want to ask. But let's now turn into the Canadiens game. Let's do a very late breakdown of the exhibition game. So let's start by asking by who impressed you the most.
Well, other than Carey Price, in spite of the score, I'd have to say it was Nick Suzuki above all else. Every forward, however, if that's wrong, please correct me. Um, and he had a beautiful, beautiful pass right through a whole bunch of bodies to Thomas Tatar to score the first goal for the Canadians. That's a play that only high veterans are able to pull off, and Nick Suzuki, like he has all season, has shown great improvements. He has shown great poise with the puck. Real competitor, great two-way center of the future. Now, he did have one egregious turnover, which resulted in a shorthanded scoring chance. However, Nick Suzuki throughout this entire season usually doesn't make those plays. So, best to get those mistakes out of the way now from the player's perspective so that he knows what to do next time and what not to do next time in a game that really matters. Basically, he has been the best, the best forward for the Canadians through the entire game, possibly the best skater.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that pass to Thomas Tatar on that first goal, just as the power play expired, was fantastic. I think Nick Suzuki is definitely, I mean, after the Tatar, Gallagher, and Philip Deneau line, I think Nick Suzuki is definitely the biggest offensive threat on this Canadians roster. I'm going to pull out what impressed me the most was actually the fourth line of Max Domi, Dale Weiss, and Jordan Wheel, because almost every time they were on the ice, they kept the Leafs hemmed in their zone. They cycled the puck. They even got a couple of decent scoring chances thrown at the net. So I just think that I mean, I don't know if Domi's going to stay on that fourth line. If all, like, that's the thing with the Canadian centers right now, or their situation at center, is that it's very, you don't have a clear number one guy besides Phil Deneau, so it's really difficult to tell who will be the 2, 3, and 4. But I think the way Max Domi played on the fourth line, even with Jordan Wheel and Dale Weiss, was very inspiring. And not to say that they should be the second better to shifts like that in the Pittsburgh series, then that's something to watch for. It's definitely something to watch for. So that's what I would go with. But totally agree with you on the Nick Suzuki front as well. Now, who or what disappointed you the most?
The Leafs scoring all the goals, and it's not just that in a vacuum. It's that the Canadians' defense and even most of the forwards didn't give any support to Carey Price. He faced 23 shots, which isn't a huge amount of shots. However, 11 of those shots were prime scoring chances. And to have a very strong defense core on any NHL franchise, you've got to be able to limit the number of scoring chances, especially 5-on-5 and the penalty kill, within 60 minutes. And unfortunately, they seemed discombobulated. They were pinching in at times when they shouldn't have. They were not aggressive enough in the defensive zone at times. One clear example of that was right off the opening shift or the shift right after that led to the first goal by Ilya Mikheyev. That whole 2-on-1 that the Leafs had on Price was due to Ben Sherratt pinching in when he shouldn't have, and that opened up a passing lane to the Leafs forward. I forget who it was, but it was the other forward on the 2-on-1 with Mikheyev.
I believe it was Tavares, but it wasn't just Sherratt that pinched. Gallagher also pinched big time and missed. But here's the thing with the Canadians' defense that I think really can't do much about it right now, is it is what it is, but beyond Petrie, I mean, sort of Kulak, but with Mete and Folin and whoever, and Ouellet and whoever's going to be on that third pair, just the Canadians don't have a strong defense, and that's something that that as fans and as the team they have to play with that in mind for the for Pittsburgh to exploit, and that's where Carey Price now. I mean, yeah, he was left out to dry a couple of times, but you know what, Carey Price is the cornerstone of this franchise, and the team is built around him. So you know what? Unfortunately, it is what it is. And Carey Price, in order for the Canadians to do anything in these playoffs, Carey Price has to stand on his head, and he has to stop. He can't give up more than 2 goals. The way I see
Yeah.
it, if he's going to give up more than 2 goals, then that's where the Canadians basically lose their shot at winning. Because
Yeah.
especially if you're gonna in this series, but just the defense, it is what it is, and I think it's the weakest point on this team,
hmm
aside
Yeah,
from having a superstar game breaker at forward.
right. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I took a look at a certain advanced statistic for goaltenders, for Carey Price, the goals saved above average, and this season he was negative 1.39, I think, which is pretty bad considering last season. I believe he was around 14 goals saved above average, which, is fair, but compared to previous years of not even his Hart and Vezina winning season, the one prior to that, 2013, 2014, he had a goal saved above average of about 17. And he played really, really well that year, and he had, I believe, the second highest save percentage of his career when he played more than 20 games. So, it's been a disappointing season for Price, and, he's a veteran. He knows that he's got
Well, I
to
wouldn't call it a
come in.
disappointing season. I just think that it's below his standards, because the disappointing
Yeah,
season for Price was 2017, 2018. That was a disappointing season. But for Price, I
yeah,
would just say
yeah.
it's a mediocre season, not a disappointing season. But I can't
Okay.
believe, in terms of what disappointed us the most, we talked this much and we haven't even gone to the power play yet. Like, because that
Oh, yeah.
was what definitely I think was the most, or I know was the most disappointing aspect of that game. And it's like, I think what's unfortunate is that the Canadians, even though they didn't get to practice it tactically and from an actual practice standpoint, the coaching staff had 4 months to scheme, to watch film, to figure out what was going wrong, to figure out what needs to be adjusted, to figure out what changes can be made, right, and implemented in a new game plan. Which, I mean, I don't know if it didn't look like even a matter of execution. Also, it was both, like, execution and schematically, because the Canadians wouldn't be able to break out of their zone. Even when they did get into the Toronto zone, they would make an extra pass to no one, right? It
Yeah.
was just so discombobulated that, I mean, could we even say that it was worse than the regular season? I think it was like, at least, again, let's not overreact, but if that's what it's going to be
Yeah.
like in this playoff round, that was arguably worse than what we saw in the regular season.
Oh, yeah, for sure. One big issue I had with this power play plan was, um, the puck carrier would consistently make a drop pass right in the defensive zone,
To
and
no one.
there'd be a trailing forward.
Well,
Pardon?
but sometimes there wouldn't be a trailing forward, and that would be another 20 seconds lost because you turn it over, and now you have to recoup, and
Yeah.
then you have to break out. Like, anyway, that was
And
by far
even,
the most
yeah,
disappointing thing.
it was so bad that the Leafs started anticipating it before the Canadians even executed it. So they would just make a wall at the blue line, and meanwhile, like, usually it would be Drouin who carries the puck in, and he's met with a wall of blue and white, and he's thinking, darn it. So, you got to get rid of the puck, dump it in, so automatically you lose possession on that point. All that time setting up is just wasted.
For sure, for sure. Now moving along here, now I want to get to talk about, because I did say let's not overreact in anything based
hmm
on one game, but I do want to get into what does any of this mean. What does that performance mean in terms of going into the play-in round against the Pittsburgh Penguins? So what does the performance against the Leafs mean to you leading into this matchup?
It means that the Canadians rightfully deserve to be considered the great underdog against the Pittsburgh
Okay, good.
Penguins.
I thought you were going to say gratefully deserve to be in this competition in the first place, but anyway, carry on.
Yeah, they've got a lot of work to do with the power play, but we've been saying that for 2 or 3 seasons now. And they got to shake off the rust pretty fast because this wasn't just
Sorry. Well,
tactics.
rust is something that all teams are dealing with here. So I
Yeah,
don't think it's a matter of rust. It's just a matter. Well, it is a matter of rust, but that's something that all teams are dealing with. Pittsburgh dealt with it in their loss to Philly. They only got two
yeah,
goals and they lost in overtime 3-2 to their arch rival. So I
yeah.
don't think rust is something that all teams are gonna have to deal with, right? I'm talking,
Okay,
but like when you're talking more about what it means, it's just like you said, just this team is going to have to play very much above their heads, just like Claude Julien said in
yeah,
his press conference on, I believe it was Wednesday or Thursday.
yeah,
Yeah, the team has to play above their heads, and that's basically
yeah.
it.
If they've got a lot up against them and whatever's ailing them, it could even be rust that could be a part of it, and they're not shaking it off enough. When combined with the poor tactics that were on exhibition in this um, pre-playoff game, there's a lot to worry about
But also the fact that
for
the
the
roster is
players.
just underpowered.
Yeah, so there is, if you are going to become concerned based on this game against the Leafs, yeah, there's a lot to work on, but the players know it. They will go about it professionally and do their best to rectify it against Pittsburgh.
So that kind of leads me to my next question, actually. So there's been a lot of talk about, we saw Nick Suzuki, but he's been on the roster pretty much this whole time. But I'm talking more about guys like Belzil, who unfortunately
Hmm.
got injured, but also Cale Fleury.
Hmm.
Maybe not so much Ryan Paling, but let's just say the young guys that haven't had a chance to play a full time role on the team yet, or
Hmm.
yeah, the guys that haven't had a chance, the young guys that haven't had a chance to play a full time role yet. Do you play them in this play-in round, or do you play the veterans and play to win? What do you think?
I would say if the series is starting to go against the Canadians to give a shakeup in the line, in the starting roster, you play the young guys.
Who are you
It
playing?
would be great. I would put in on defense either Noah Juleson or Cale Fleury. Um, I would not go with Christian Folan. He doesn't have the upside, and at least if you end up bowing out to Pittsburgh, playing the younger kids, either Fleury or Jolson, will give them incredible experience for at least several years as they stay in the organization. And maybe they can bring in some fresh energy. Um, if Jordan Wheel or Dale Weiss aren't getting it done, you throw in Ryan Paling on the fourth line.
But here's
It'll be
the
good
thing though.
experience.
Do you want these young guys? Here's another question. Do you want these young guys to play just for the sake of playing them, or do you want them to earn their spot?
Both actually. And even more than that, I understand that Claude Julien likes to play the veterans. However, it could potentially be that the veterans in the bottom six could lose their spots due to
Exactly.
their play.
So sorry. Just you have to think if you're going to play one of these young guys, right? You got to take someone out of the lineup. So you're talking about playing.
Mhm.
I agree with you on Cale Fleury 100%. I believe Cale Fleury should be in on that right side on the third pairing, even if he's with Mete. Sure, why not? Play him with
Yeah,
Mete, see what he's got, right? Over Folan especially. But Ryan Paling, that means if you put Ryan Paling as a fourth line center, that means you got to take out either Domi, Dano, Kotkaniemi, or Suzuki at center. So
hmm,
so that's where you got to think. You can't just
yeah,
you got to draw the line between do you play these young guys for the sake of playing them, or which young guys do you play? Do you give more of a
hmm,
leash to versus which guys do you want to kind of write off for now or see what they have at training camp?
yeah. And even if Paling, if I were in charge and I put Paling in the lineup, because the only potentially available spot would be on the fourth line, I would not put him at center. I'd leave Domi there because he does do better at center. I'd have him playing on the wing. If that means taking Weiss out, fine. If it means taking Wheel out, you take away a right-handed center who's playing on the wing, but fine. You know, um, it is a lineup issue, and what happens happens.
Yeah, I mean, look, like on defense, I think we can both agree. Like I said, put in Fleury for Christian Fullen with even if he's with Mete and see what happens. Maybe if you want to give him a little more stability, maybe throw him in with Kulak, maybe Ben Sherratt, who knows? But then again, you have to move Petrie down if that's the case. So anyway, we agree on Fleury, but now let's talk about Ryan Poehling, though. Let's talk about the center ice position as a whole, because the Canadian center ice position, I would say it's more of a problem, like a bad problem than a good problem, because right now the Canadians have a lot of centers or potentially capable centers, but the only two that are solidified right now are Danault and Suzuki. But who you want to ideally have is you want Kotkaniemi to be one of the top two. You want Domi to be in the top two, maybe even the top three, and you want Poehling to have a spot as well, right?
Yep.
But just there's just too many bodies. Like that's I think a real big problem with this team is that you have a lot of options. You have what's ideal versus the reality is just kind of out of whack here because, like I said, you want Kotkaniemi to be the number two, maybe even the number one guy, right? But Danault's outplaying him for sure. Danault as one of the best two-way centers in the game, he can't give up that number one spot. Suzuki with the way he's playing, you don't want him to lose that number two spot, right? And then Domi, that's where again it's kind of between Domi, Poehling, and Kotkaniemi. They're kind of it's a bit of a tough situation in terms of trying to find a spot for them or the right spot for them.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue. I guess the best thing I could say to that is if Poehling's going to make it, he will have to play on the wing, and I believe he's much more comfortable on the wing than Domi is by far, and with Kotkaniemi. He did demonstrate that at his World Juniors, and I think he scored a hat trick or 4 goals on the wing, which was a good performance for him, to say the least. But with Domi being on the fourth line, well, that's because he came late to camp, but he also plays center so much better on the wing. He has more control of the puck. He can see the ice better.
But he also scored only 9 goals in an 82-game season from the wing, and then from center he put up a career season of I think it was 70 points in 2017-2018. So that's another problem they have to think of.
Yeah, I saw an article today that says it makes no sense why the highest point scorer for the Canadians the past 2 seasons is on the fourth line at center. And I understand where the writer's coming from. However, would it come at the expense of, say, Kotkaniemi's development? Do you put Kotkaniemi in natural center on or not? It's a real lineup issue.
Yeah, so I do want to move on a little bit here and actually kind of ask another relevant question. But before I want to settle this at least for the playing round. So here's my plan, and you can agree or disagree real quick. So I believe you have Danault, number 1, stays that way. Suzuki, number 2, stays that way. Although I think they're saying that Suzuki might draw the matchup of Crosby. Or at least in the previous game, Kotkaniemi, I think, played against Matthews. I think Danault has to draw Malkin, and you have to decide which of the 3 others after that draw Crosby. But I would say Domi cannot be lower than your number 3. Domi has to be a 2 or a 3. And then wherever Domi isn't, Suzuki is. And then after that, you got to find the spot for time for Ryan Poehling will be training camp. That's what training camp will be for. You figure that out whenever that is, for going into next season, whenever it starts. But yeah, I would say for this series at least, you got to have Danault cover Malkin, draw the Malkin line. You got to have either Suzuki or Domi as the second line, and whoever is not on the second line, they're your third line. And you also have to think about matchups also, where the face-off is and all that. offensive zone. Like it could honestly just be a toss up between Suzuki and Domi, but then Kotkaniemi, I would say, is just for his development. It's just I think it was just not just we have to be patient with him. We got to be patient with
Hmm.
him because
Oh yeah,
Merritt
for sure.
on a call with the with TSN in Ottawa, TSN Radio in Ottawa, saying
Hmm.
how the Canadians screwed up the Kotkaniemi pick, should have taken Brady Tkachuk. That's a whole other story that we can get into, but I
Yeah,
just believe that with Kotkaniemi, we got to be patient, and his time in the NHL is not might not be now. Kale Fleury,
yeah,
play him. Kotkaniemi, not yet. I would
yeah.
hold off on him a little bit at least for now, and give him the reins next season. We'll see where figure it out in the other off season and going into next training camp and take it from there. And
Hmm.
all that being said, yeah, sorry, it's the only problem with recording outside is all the flies here. But
Yeah,
um,
yeah. Yeah.
my next question. Now we're gonna turn to actually previewing the playing round with Pittsburgh.
Hmm.
Lafreniere or play to win?
Uh, for my position, I believe it is in the best interest of the Canadians organization that they do lose to the Penguins to avoid potentially beating them and losing out on the chance on not just that 12.5% chance of winning the Lafreniere sweepstakes, the first overall pick, but also potentially losing out on a ninth overall pick. Because this draft is incredibly deep. You could potentially get the best goal scorer of the draft, Alexander Holtz out of Sweden, at number 9. That would be insane. Um, so for the future of the organization, certainly lose to Pittsburgh. However, I say to the players, definitely play to win. However, I do not see this team being capable of beating Pittsburgh in a 5-game series. So give it your all, but their all will not be enough.
Well, exactly it. So but first of all, here's my belief. Um, if you have a chance to win the Stanley Cup, you win the Stanley Cup. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I could tell you today on July 31st, 2020, that the Montreal Canadiens are going to win the 2020 Stanley Cup. Just by some like Crosby gets injured, God forbid, I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but someone gets
Mm-hmm.
injured, Canadians get by Pittsburgh, Canadians get by Boston or Tampa or whoever they'll play next, and they make it to the finals. They go on a magical. Carey Price plays better than Halak did in 2010. And they go on a magical run
Mm-hmm.
and win the Stanley Cup in 2020. If you have that possibility, you take that outcome over drafting Lafreniere. But
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing. Here's what we have to bear in mind. The
Mm-hmm.
odds of that happening, are they greater or less than 12.5%?
To me, they are far less than 12.5%.
Thank you. They are probably 1%, half a percent, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Not they're not very good, right? So to get there, to win the Stanley Cup, a lot more things have to happen for the Canadians to win the Stanley Cup than to draft Alexandre Lafreniere. So
Yeah.
that's why we gotta root for the Lafreniere sweepstakes. Let's
Yep.
just I say we enjoy the ride. We enjoy the
Oh yeah.
opportunity to watch playoff hockey in July while it matters, right? And
Hmm.
but then deep down we want to hope for the Canadians to not win and you know win the Lafreniere sweepstakes and
Yep.
hopefully add another probably what will be the one or second or third impact forward to this roster right now, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
So let's move along. We'll tidy this up soon, but I just have a couple more questions I want to ask. So, um, what will it take for the Montreal Canadiens to win? What do you think will it take for the Montreal Canadiens to win?
Well, like for the past several years, it's going to take Carey Price playing not just above his head, but playing above Patrick Waz and Dominic Hasek's head. Um, because this season, so many ups and downs, and even though Carey Price has had several decent playoffs the past several times he's been there, um, he needs to elevate his game even more, and he knows it. It's also going to take a huge team effort in front of him, and Jonathan Drouin to play out of his mind